You're listening to The Standard Podcast. Eye-opening for your ears.
สวัสดีค่ะโบสาวิตรีนะคะ This is We Need To Talk Podcast Talk Show ภาษาอังกฤษสำหรับคนไทยที่ใช้ภาษาอังกฤษค่ะ Hi you guys, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for listening. ตามธรรมเนียมของ We Need To Talk โบจะชวนเกสของเราคุย3ประเด็นนะคะถ้าเป็นพี่ฮิวโก้เนี่ยเรื่องแรกที่โบอยากจะชวนคุยน่าจะเป็นเรื่องของคอนเสิร์ตใหญ่ในเดือนกันยายนปี2560นี้ค่ะหลังจากที่ไม่ได้มีคอนเสิร์ตของตัวเองมานานมากแฟนๆน่ะตื่นเต้นแน่แต่พี่ฮิวโก้น่ะตื่นเต้นไหมหรือตื่นเต้นแค่ไหนเดี๋ยวโบจะถามให้นะคะเรื่องที่2คุณผู้ฟังทราบไหมคะตอนนี้กำลังมีนิทรรศการชื่อจักรพงศ์นิทัศน์และ100 ปีสยามกับสงครามโลกครั้งที่1ที่จัดแสดงพระประวัติและผลงานของสมเด็จเจ้าฟ้าจักรพงศ์ภูวนาถกรมหลวงพิษณุโลกประชานาถซึ่งเป็นท่านทวดของพี่ฮิวโก้ค่ะนิทรรศการนี้จัดแสดงให้ชมถึงวันที่30กันยายนปี2560ที่จำหลักจิตรลดาพิพิธภัณฑ์ตำรวจวังปารุสกวันชมฟรีด้วยนะคะนิทรรศการนี้จะมีอะไรน่าสนใจเป็นพิเศษบ้างเดี๋ยวมาฟังพี่ฮิวโก้เล่ากันค่ะและเรื่องสุดท้ายโบอยากฟังพี่ฮิวโก้เล่าเรื่องในฐานะคุณพ่อค่ะไหนๆวันนี้เราก็ได้พูดคุยกันเรื่องของคุณทวดมาคุยเรื่องของรุ่นหลานๆกันบ้างก็น่าจะสนุกดีนะคะเอาล่ะค่ะตอนนี้ได้เวลาเปลี่ยนโหมดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษกันแล้วพร้อมหรือยังคะ Ladies and gentlemen, it would be my pleasure to introduce our guest for this episode of We Need to Talk podcast. He's a singer, a musician, a songwriter, once an actor and a model, now a husband and a father. Besides being so handsome, talented, cool, and smart, he's also known for speaking his mind and voicing thought-provoking opinions. Let's meet him now, P. เล็กฮิวโก้ค่ะสวัสดีค่ะพี่เล็ก
สวัสดีครับ
Thank you so much for being on our show and happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Your birthday was on August 6th, so yay. So since our show is called We Need to Talk, first thing we need to talk about is your upcoming big concert, right? So you've done a lot of things in life, but as a career, I've heard on some interviews that you enjoy being on stage performing your music the most. Is that so?
Yeah, it's the main reason I do what I do aside from it being my living or my job, but that's the outside of any personal things in my life. That is a time where I feel like the inner and outer is not in conflict and everything is as it should be. There's no compromise, there's no obstacles. The people on the audience are on your side, your band, you're rehearsed, you're where you want to be, doing what you want to do. That's why I don't really feel a need to jump out of airplanes or swim with sharks or do anything like that.
Yeah. So what does this concert mean to you?
This one in particular? This is an attempt to give the fans, I think this is what they want. Previously, I've been quite rigorous in just ramming my artistic vision down people's throats and they either take it or leave it. This time and this album, although not in a kind of pandering way, but I've been attempting to communicate directly with them and in playing around the country, every now and then a guy will shout out some song from like 15 years ago that I haven't played in a long time. And so I've decided that while the album is done and all the creative decisions have been made and there's been no compromise and it's been made exactly how I think it should be and there've been very few obstacles in bringing it to market. It's the artwork, everything. I've had plenty of control. So why not do a concert that is one that I think that Thai fans want, which is to sing songs from the entire catalog and just the Thai songs.
And I think they appreciate that.
We'll see if they buy tickets. We'll see.
Do you guys hear that? Buy tickets.
It's the only way to know.
Yep. So the concert is called Sing Corporation presents Hugo ภาษาแม่
Yeah.
What can we expect the experience for that night to be like?
Well, there's going to be a lot of music. We're going to play the entirety of Damsanit, which is the new record. And then we're going to get into something from every Sip Law album. So it's going to be a pretty broad chunk of material. There's over 30 songs. So I hope this is what they want because they're going to get a lot of it.
Just out of curiosity, why ภาษาแม่
Well, it's like a direct translation of the English phrase mother tongue. When someone asks, when you speak a language, it's your mother tongue. And in my case, it's relevant because my mother is someone who has worked a lot in the Thai language, even to the extent of doing the Oxford Dictionary. And yet is often someone, because she looks outwardly, looks like a European. People sometimes question her Thainess, but I think she has a command of Thai that far exceeds the average Thai speaker and a knowledge of Thai history and culture and whatever. Coupled with my father, who's not Thai at all. And in Thailand, it's amusing when you say the word father. Pa. But มันไม่ใช่ภาษาพ่อ because that's true. It's not my father's language. So it's my mother's language. ภาษาแม่
That makes sense. You're, like you said, you're from several cultural backgrounds. You've worked in different countries and different industries. You've been in so many places. You were Hugo of Wong Sip Law, and you are P. Hugo, who once wrote a song for Beyonce. What would be something that you've noticed from just being around all over the places that we as human have in common, no matter where they live?
Well, I guess there are some things that are kind of across the board. Everyone, when they're young, they think they know everything. And then when you get older, you realize you don't know everything and practically know nothing at all. When you're young, you're very liberal, sometimes even radical, and want to change the world. When you're older, you become more conservative and you want things not to change so fast. Having children changes most people for the better. And I don't think anyone is rational. I think people do what they want to do or can do because of the opportunities they have, and then rationalize it afterwards and say, well, this is why, and this is who I am because of X, Y, and Z. But I think most of us are just sort of stumbling along, thinking we have some level of free will, but I think we might have a lot less than we think. And I think that's across the board. But people are very, very different as well. There's not a lot you can assume about someone by looking at them.
Right, that's true. So being a musician, that gives you opportunities to travel all over. And you said earlier that you've traveled across the country, well, like across Thailand.
Sure.
And I've heard that you also traveled all over the U.S. for being on tour in both countries. Where would you say would be some of your favorite places that you would like to revisit?
Oh, I very much liked Tennessee.
Yeah?
Yeah, I thought it was very pretty. I liked it a lot. I was amazed by Wyoming. I'd never been in such an open space in my life. I'd never seen 500 miles go by with not a single building or anything. The Pacific Northwest and the whole West Coast I found to be, the most sort of progressive and modern and beautiful part of the United States. I felt very safe there. A lot of parts of America I liked a lot, despite me taking quite a close interest in history and whatever else. And then America gets a lot of criticism, particularly now.
Yeah.
It's still an amazing country full of amazing people, and you can go anywhere and find a whole town or even a whole city that's different that you could find like-minded people in. So it's very diverse. I'm still going to live in Thailand just because my roots here are too deep to spend anywhere else, really.
Yeah, and I think that was my favorite part in the U.S. too. Being around such a diverse group of people and everyone are so open-minded, especially in college. I remember being in college and being in the like-minded people, and everyone was there ready to accept everybody else and everybody else's cultures. And I thought that was the coolest thing. You know, America is the melting pot. So I think that was one of my favorite parts about the U.S. too. Now you mentioned Tennessee and Wyoming. Is that because you sort of... I've heard that you like cowboy movies.
Sure, yeah.
Does that play a part? Is that
Absolutely.
a part of why you love those places?
In England, when I was young, on the weekends I would go and stay with my father, and on Channel 4, back when there were only 4 TV channels, he would go and play tennis or do something, and I would watch these westerns. They seemed so long, the movies. And it would be, you know, John Wayne movies, Clint Eastwood movies, and other westerns like that. And yeah, I mean, you know, it was a sort of an archetype of how men should behave and being reliant and being someone people could depend on. And you know, there's still a lot of that in America, that sense of self-reliance and that sense of toughness. And that, you know, because in a lot of the Western cultures or developed countries, a lot of that's been lost or deliberately, you know, ushered away as something bad or negative or backward. America still has, you know, in its diversity, it still has that very almost old school masculinity, which I think still has a place. Not for everybody and not in all of its extremes, but it's still something worth having in mind as an archetype of the lone, you know, the lone guy that you don't know who he is or where he's come from, and it doesn't matter. You don't know his background, you don't know where he's from, but he could come somewhere and change everything or help people out. And there's a particular movie called The Outlaw Josie Wales, where Clint Eastwood is this Civil War veteran, and he's a lone rider like he always plays, but he starts collecting people. He doesn't want them around, but he ends up having to help them out anyway, and they start following him around. By the end of the movie, he's got like 5 or 6 different people like following him around everywhere, and he's had to kind of have a family despite never wanting a family and losing all his family in the beginning of the movie, and then he sort of finds a new family begrudgingly, you know. And so I guess I have a very romantic view of that probably very brutal period in American history. Where a lot of bad stuff was going on as well.
You have also done some acting yourself. You once said that you didn't really like yourself as an actor. Which part of it don't you like?
Well, you know, the movies I like and the actors I like are guys who completely lose themselves in a role, and you feel like they could do anything. Any top actor is someone who is totally unpredictable in the movie. You don't know whether they're going to take their clothes off or start eating an live octopus or whatever. I can't do any of that stuff. I'm still too much me, and there are things I won't do. Particularly now I'm married, I'm not about to do any sex scenes or any, you know, I don't particularly want to get hurt doing stunts. I don't want to start learning like martial arts or mountain climbing or any of that stuff. There's too much I already want to do without risking life and limb, you know, and days and days of my time in pursuit of whatever it is. And there are lots of good actors that can do it. You know, there are lots of... So it's not like I'm really needed there. I don't think there are a lot of people, at least in Thailand, doing what I'm doing necessarily. So I feel like I have a role to play. I have an audience to entertain and to you know, play music to. There's some kind of whatever it is they get from it. I would like to continue doing that, and acting takes a lot of time. Plus with children, you know, between work, spending time with my wife and being available for my children, there isn't time to be sitting around waiting for someone to have their makeup done or whatever, you know.
Now, the second thing we need to talk about is about your great-grandfather. Now, there's a Jakapong exhibition going on as we speak until the end of September 2017. I imagine that you probably have grown up hearing a ton of stories about your great-grandfather. Were there any particular stories that stuck out to you?
Well, I just think how much people used to get done in a life. And this is a man who died young. And yet he was, doing all kinds of different things. I mean, the amount of individual skills a man would learn back then. Mm-hmm. But obviously, I think the most impressive and kind of tragic thing was obviously his relationship with Katya, which at the time was completely unheard of to have as an interracial couple in a conservative country. But I guess he was lucky at the time that His Majesty Rama V was a pretty modern monarch, and so could kind of take it. And it almost made sense because he was so outward looking. Mm-hmm. So I guess that relationship and its kind of tragic end, I guess, is the thing which has always stayed with me. That there are things are beautiful but they are fragile, and life is fragile. But it's okay to do the unexpected. It's okay to be unconventional. And as an adventurous and modern guy, and the effect that it's had on my mother, the sense of duty that she has to maintain and document and continue and to live a life of some substance. And although not necessarily to have any official role, but certainly that this life should not be wasted in view of how we've arrived at this point. It would be a shame to be descended from that and just to throw it all away on fast cars and even faster women.
Oh, I love that line. I love that sentence. That sums it up really well. And I think it's important even for normal people to know who you are and to know where you came from and to know your family history. It's important to know where your roots are. And since the world has changed so much, and sometimes in ways we can't even imagine, and it's still rapidly changing, why do we still need to study about the past and learn about the past?
The present is the result of the past, and that's an inescapable truth. So to have any hope of understanding where we are now or where we might go, we have to look at where we've been. And aside from its philosophical importance, I think just as a matter of interest, a city with no past or with no link to its past or with a recent past is not as interesting as a city with a deep past and roots to its past. This is what I don't know if it's still the case, but there's a reason why London is one of the most visited cities in the world. It's because it's been there for over 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. There's a reason people go to Jerusalem. Now there are other things that people go to, places like that. But I mean, just in terms of being interesting, just as an aesthetic choice, historical things and things of beauty are things of beauty. And the older they are, the more amazing it is that they even existed in the first place. You could build something as big as the pyramids anywhere you want. In fact, I think they've got one in Las Vegas. But yeah. That's not what people think of when they say the pyramids. They think of the ones that are 5,000 or 6,000 years old. Mm-hmm. And it's the same in Thailand and, in this area, we have temples and our ancient sites and even things that are stretched back into the 20th, recent 20th century, like, all these old cinemas we have. And yep. Particular concern of mine is all the communities along the river, which are in danger of being moved away for some short-sighted concrete monstrosity. Mm-hmm. So I've always been interested in history, but I've probably become more so in that, we don't have a lot of it, and what we have, we should try and keep. Just from an artistic point of view, I don't think you even justify it in any other way other than aesthetically.
Mm-hmm. Because in other places, even around Asia, their historical sites aren't as in good shape as ours. And it's such a shame that it's slowly deteriorating and we're not even taking care of it.
Yeah, it is a shame. And I think it's important because because the shared historical buildings or artifacts or art, that belongs to the nation. It's not just from one person to another. So, and in that sense, all Thai people own the river, own the temples, own our art and our heritage and our culture. It's something we share that doesn't cost any money for individuals to take part in. So, on every level, it's worth preserving. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't progress and there shouldn't be modern buildings and there shouldn't be new technology and all that stuff is great, but that's going to happen anyway. That doesn't need any help. Capitalism moves things forward anyway. The market and technology and the internet, it's going to make new things happen anyway.
Right.
But what little we've got that is old and it's continuous, I think it helps for us to stay in touch with our roots collectively.
Now, last but not least, let's talk about your family. We're still on the topic of family, but a different generation now. You're known for your directness and you're a straight shooter. You tell it how it is and you don't sugarcoat things. And once you've said that, you never lie to your kids. You have 3 children.
Well, 2, but yeah, well, there's another kid that's kind of part of my mother-in-law's family that is, like a sister to them, I guess.
Right. So, how old are they?
They're 6 and 3, and the little girl is 2.
So they must be asking a lot of questions now, right?
My oldest one asks a lot of questions.
Yeah.
The little one is mainly orders, that he gives me orders and demands of what he wants me to do, where he wants me to go, and which dinosaur I'm supposed to be or whatever. But yeah, the older kid asks a lot of questions.
Yeah. I have a nephew who is around 6 too.
Yeah.
And for a period of time, his favorite phrase was ทำไมอะ
Yeah, sure.
ทำไมอะ all the time. So
Yeah.
how would you answer some of the harder questions? Have these ever come up? Like, Dad, where did I come from?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would try and answer them, as in, well, you came out of your mother. I was there. I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about like, Dad, am I going to die? How would you answer something like
Yeah,
that to a
everybody
little
dies.
kid?
Everything dies.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell it how it is.
It's not that disturbing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dad, who do you love more, me or Hunter?
Oh, I tell him I love both of you. Because also, when you tell, that's a complex thing when you talk about love, because love isn't really, it's not really like a feeling of like, it's not a feeling, it's a pattern of behavior. It's something you have to demonstrate. It's not just some feeling that you automatically have and like, oh, I love my kids. But if you don't spend any time with them, you clearly don't. Mm-hmm. So I don't worry about words like that too much. It's very easy for me to say, yeah, I love you both the same, because
it's all about the actions, right?
It's about what you do. So, and I guess you'll figure it out if I'm telling the truth or not. But
us, and hopefully your tickets will sell really well, and our listeners will go out and buy your tickets.
Please do.
And break a leg at the concert.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. ถ้ารู้ว่าเพื่อนคนไหนรักภาษาอังกฤษชอบฟังภาษาอังกฤษและเรื่องราวชีวิตที่น่าสนใจของเซเลบหลากหลายโบฝากแชร์เอพิโซดนี้ให้เขาฟังด้วยนะคะ
Binge listen to all of our shows and episodes at thestandard.co/podcast. The Standard Podcast เปิดหูเปิดตาเปิดใจเปิดโลก